Well, hello everyone and happy Tuesday. It is so wonderful to be with you all for the Carnegie Connection 2024. My name is Annie Kramer. I'm a senior director here at Carnegie and on our client success team. And I couldn't be more honored to kick things off. So I am thrilled to be here this morning with Alexis Russo, who is with Google, and she is going to be presenting on the new student journey. And who to know better about that than Google? And they're going to be sharing, she's going to be sharing with us some really wonderful things this morning. But before we get started, I wanted to cover just a couple of quick housekeeping items. As you know, this session, you probably figured this out, is going to be recorded for anyone that wasn't able to make it this morning. And it will be available for all attendees by the end of next week. All session attendees in this format of Zoom, your camera is off, although we would love to see all of your smiling faces. And while the video streaming window you're currently in offers both Wahoo and Zoom functionality, for the chats and Q&A, we would ask that you would use the Zoom functionality because that's what I can see. So that if you do have questions throughout, please feel free to post those in there. I confirm with Alexis that we will have time at the end for Q&A. And we want to make sure that we're able to most effectively and efficiently answer your questions. So we'll do Q&A at the end, but if there are questions throughout that you want to throw in there, we can address those at the end of the session. And if you have any questions throughout the conference, please don't hesitate to email our team at conferences@carnegiehighereducation.com or message in the Wahoo app under the Ask Organizers Anything, and someone will be able to get back to you. And then finally, of course, we would encourage you to use these hashtags on social media if you wanted to post about any of the great things that you learned today, which is hashtag the connection or tag at Carnegie HQ for any posts that you share about sessions today. So with that, I am very excited to turn this over to Alexis, who as you may have picked up on, we're experiencing just a little bit of technical difficulties. She's got a wonderful presentation. Your eyes were going to be on her slides anyway, so you're going to hear her voice and unfortunately not be able to see her face. So, but I'm going to turn it over to Alexis and let's get started. Alexis, thank you so much for being here and joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I would say it's great to see everyone, but I'm camera off. You guys are camera off. We are all in the same boat. So how off-brand is it that a Googler is experiencing technical difficulties? But you know what happens to the best of us. So I first wanted to say thank you so much for joining us today. Lizzie, we can go to the next slide. Before we begin, it might be helpful for me to share a little bit of background about myself. As mentioned, I am at the head of industry here at Google. This is really what my face looks like, I promise, if you could see me live. But I've been at Google for about 6 years now, specifically specializing in education, meaning I get the opportunity to work with a portfolio of partners across higher ed, as well as in the ed tech landscape as well. I'd like to, typically say that our team acts as the front door to Google, to the many additional teams and products across the entire Google ecosystem, primarily partnering with higher ed institutions who are focused on advancing their digital marketing properties. So think search, YouTube, discovery, but we also extend that access across other Google properties like Cloud, Google Marketing Platform, YouTube Learning, Google Classroom, and Grow with Google as well. I am so passionate about what we collectively get to do in higher education. I love our job as marketers because without marketing, people don't act. They don't buy, they don't vote, they don't click. Marketing is the profit center of any company. And when you get the opportunity to couple marketing with the education ecosystem, it's truly the cherry on top because at the end of the day, we aren't selling shirts or shoes or sugary sodas. We have the opportunity to provide access to education and truly transform lives. So now, quick personal self-deprecating story to share. Last week, I embarked on a cross-country trip from New York back to California, where I am right now. And anyone that knows me knows I am a terrible flyer. You can't see this, but I also happen to be 7 months pregnant right now. So my anxiety was a bit at an all-time high. Takeoff was relatively smooth. You guys, I put my AirPods in. I was listening to a soothing, calm meditation, and I was feeling fine. And then right around the midway point, it started to get a little bumpy. So I'd like to picture me, have you picture me, 7 months pregnant, white knuckling my armrests for a good 30 plus minutes as we were going through extremely bumpy turbulence. I felt dizzy, lightheaded, and I actually had to ring the bell for assistant. I'm sure my seatmates weren't sure if I was nervous or in active labor or what. But I bring this incredibly self-deprecating story up to draw a loose analogy to the higher ed landscape and draw your attention to the considerations impacting enrollments today. We can go to the next slide. In some ways, the beginning of this year has been relatively smooth. In spring of 2024, we saw enrollment growth increase by 2.5% for undergrad, 3% for grad, a relatively smooth takeoff, right? However, there are some concurrent turbulent pockets of air on the horizon for higher education. First, the enrollment cliff, which comes in a few different forms. We are all aware of the demographic cliff of college-ready students forecasted to hit the US particularly hard starting next year through 2030. There's a simultaneous financial cliff as a fallout from FAFSA issues, which have delayed financial aid offers, and then compound that with Americans' confidence in higher education being at 36% in 2023 per Gallup polling, all of which helps explain the unfortunate continued trend of college closures. So now this enrollment cliff spanning across demographic, financial, confidence factors means that our student pool of roughly 25 million prospective students will ultimately shrink. So instead of bracing for impact, we need to tighten our seatbelts and shift our focus to the key trends impacting the student journey today. Now, if you go to the next slide, this is often how we think about the student journey, a very linear progression that goes through specific stages, right? Awareness, consideration, conversion. Of course, this is a hyper simplified horizontal view of the journey. And while it looks simple enough, we know that the reality is far more complex. And on the next slide, it mirrors something a little bit more like this. It is long, it's lengthy, it's convoluted. Our research shows that 59% of prospective degree students took 4 months or less after conducting their initial research to enroll in a program. That's when they're already in the market. From research to enroll, it took 4 months or less. And we know that during this time frame, there are thousands of digital touch points influencing that decision-making process. Our research has actually shown that 99% of student journeys are unique. And what that has led to is both students and marketers in 2024 and beyond feeling a bit like this. Students asking, do I want to go to college? Is it worth it? How am I paying for this? Marketers asking, what is AI? How can I use it? Is it worth it? So for the next 30 minutes or so, we are going to focus our discussion on how to prepare for a smooth landing by shifting that focus. We're going to discuss what we're seeing in terms of search trends based on Google search data. We'll discuss what we're hearing from students based on our third-party research with Ipsos. And finally, what you can all do about it as marketers. Now, first up, the good news, that despite these difficult factors, we're seeing search demand is up. The future of higher education is strong and demand for this category continues to grow. And as you can see here, we've observed an 8% year-over-year increase in searches for education in the first half of 2024. We've seen this across global search trends as well, agnostic of EDU. And you may recall this stat that Google has always touted, that 15% of searches are new on Google every single day. What's incredible is that this stat has remained true for over a decade. We're seeing that search is becoming more conversational in nature as well, with 1.5 times faster volume growth for queries of 5 or more words, showcasing that the way that students are looking for education and information is constantly changing. It's becoming more conversational in nature. So how you're going to capture that interest and increase demand has to take into account the trends impacting the student journey and opportunities for marketing and enrollment professionals. Now, there are 3 imperatives going forward that demand our attention: affordability, career outcomes, and new international audiences. Now, first, let's dive into affordability. You can go to the next slide. Perfect. 55% of students say that affordable tuition, you can go to the next slide. There you go. 55% of students say that affordable tuition is a top consideration as they research degree programs. We see this continuing to be a driving consideration factor for so many prospective students as one of the biggest financial decisions they'll make ultimately in their lifetime. So we wanted to peel back that onion a little bit further to understand what would it take to make this large financial decision a little bit more palpable. And on the next slide, we see that 43% of students say that they would need tuition discounts from institutions in order to complete their program. And again, this is reflected in our search query data, with students actively researching financial aid options. Searches for financial aid specifically are going at 3% in the first half of 2024. And we've seen many higher education institutions rise to the occasion and tackle this head on in a few different ways. First, by leveraging standardized technology and terminology, making it easier to understand different types of aid available. We've seen detailed cost breakdowns showing the total cost of attendance, including direct and indirect costs, separating out grants and scholarships from loans and work study. We've also seen estimated net price calculator tools, providing a clear picture of the student's out-of-pocket cost. These are extremely helpful in terms of price transparency. I personally remember when my husband was looking to transition from an engineering background to a nurse. There was so little information about what it was going to cost for him to decide. I urge you all to do a customer analysis of your own university, go through that lead to an enroll process, and look at the opportunities to really personalize that experience and provide that transparency and next steps to students. Now, on the next slide, you'll see that in light of the financial undertaking that we just discussed, students demand a clearer sight to outcomes. They want to know what they're going to learn, how the job market values that training, and what career it will net out to on the back end of their investment. Students want to make sure that they are picking up the hard skills they need so they can get the ROI that they seek on their investment. Now, our research shows that 1 in 4 students enrolled in a short course say that while a degree qualifies them for a job, a short course better prepares them for it. This is no surprise, and it really underscores the growth that we're seeing in terms of the overall category. We see this validated by National Student Clearinghouse data as well, where the most significant growth by category is coming from these alternative degree pathways. But this isn't either a degree or a short course conversation. In fact, it's an and conversation. On the next slide, you'll see that 33% of prospective students are also considering enrolling in a short course or certificate program. So ask yourselves, does your current program mix reflect how students today are cross-shopping? And similar with transparency and pricing, how transparent are we about the job readiness availability of many of these degree and short course programs? Because the good news is, on the next slide, you'll see that they're looking to you, universities, to ultimately deliver that experience. Nearly half of non-degree students said that they would consider enrolling in a short course, certificate, or boot camp provided by a university. You have the brand name, reputation, and credibility that students seek when shopping for a short course or degree. And finally, with a shrinking pool in light of this demographic cliff, students are demanding affordability and career outcomes. We can continue to look at how we need to generate demand for the future And we project that future is going to be borderless and limitless. So when we think about expansion and internationalization, we're really talking about the idea of liberating content and instruction. We believe that brands will be rewarded for providing access to education and reaching students beyond their traditional regional or even national boundaries. We're kind of talking about a purposeful move toward reaching more students and providing value to them. Now, these flexible modalities are now widely accepted with institutions offering online pathways to education that students see extremely valuable. With this shift also comes an opportunity to open the virtual doors to students who otherwise wouldn't enroll or even consider your institution. So while the US is the leading market by dollar amount, global enrollment growth projections for other regions provide an opportunity to capture a new set of prospective students. That shrinking pool of students today translates to an ocean of opportunity with 380 million projected students globally by 2030. And now on the next slide, we'll see that the demand for EDU mirrors that of the US, with mid to high single-digit growth in many English first speaking countries like Canada and the UK, with similar top considerations that we've shared. 53% are focused on affordability, if you go to the next slide, and 49% are focused on job placement and career outcomes. So, what does this all mean for education leaders of today? Go to the next slide. That despite the macro impacts, changing student priorities, the future of higher education is still strong, and demand, as we've showcased, for this category continues to grow in the US and beyond. But how you're going to capture that interest and increase demand has to be anchored in a solid foundation and action plan. So what we want to do right now is really translate these insights into action. So on the next slide, you'll see that, again, the student journey has indeed changed. It's complex, it's nonlinear. Invest in your first-party data and insights to measure your marketing tactics from beginning to end. I've worked with some of the largest digital advertisers in this space, and how people use their data and insights is ultimately what defines the difference between good and great. And to anyone in there who has experimented with our AI-powered products at Google, Performance Max is one of those key solutions. It really spans your coverage across all of our Google properties. Think search, YouTube, discovery, GDN. It allows you to find the right person at the right time based on their intent. However, data is critical to that success, meaning your inputs define the outputs. So invest in your first-party data to make AI work smarter for you. Second, on the next slide, students care about your value proposition, affordability, and outcomes. In a world where there are so many new options, new paths, new opportunities, communicate why you, why now, why for them. I'm going to go back to that example that I shared about my husband. When he was looking up for a nursing program, do you know who can show up in his search results and still be relevant? Pretty much anyone. Every Big 10, Pac-12, every school down the street or across the country. And while I'm slightly exaggerating to make this point, it's not that far off. In our recent conversations with partners, we're looking at who now is it bidding in their search auction, and we're seeing with wide eyes and jaws dropping that once when an online for-profit school used to really own this niche of a market, they now have Texas, USC, Cal, Central Michigan, and NYU all showing up on that same search results page. So with so many players competing for students' mindsets, the why you is especially important because students are prioritizing very different things today than they were just a few years ago. And finally, time to expand your marketing. Look beyond your traditional national regional audiences and start exploring internationally. Be on the right side of this, get your spot on the consideration set, and take advantage of the opportunity to go anywhere without geo limitations. Establish that brand in a sea of sameness. Now, brand awareness is going to be the key here in getting you on the consideration list in the first place. So now, in closing, as we look forward to the defining trends in EDU for today and beyond, it's not really that new, but for many, it'll be really different. But the key takeaway is acting now. There may be a little bit of rough air, but stay calm, buckle those seatbelts, and prepare for a smooth landing and shift that focus to data, communicating your value prop, and doubling down on brand awareness. And now, Anne, how about we open it up for a couple questions?
Fantastic. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alexis. That was great. I was over here jotting down some notes myself, so that was fantastic. Really appreciate that. Okay, so as noted at the start of the session, if there are questions that you would like us to ask Alexis, please put those in the Q&A feature in Zoom at the bottom of the Zoom bar. That is the way that I am going to be able to see them. I do have one question that came in through the chat, and it was in particular, we have a couple of questions. So one was, is there any research on how long the research process goes on for? And that certainly could be for the undergraduate audience or for the graduate audience. And Suzanne, hopefully I captured that correctly. But that was one question that we had.
Yes. Our research shows that the vast majority, roughly 60% of prospective degree students, took roughly 4 months after conducting their initial research to enroll in a program. So it's lengthy, right? Which leaves us with like a lot of opportunity to influence throughout that decision-making time. So even across that 4-month journey, we're finding too, there's like so very little commitment, even after you apply to a specific university, for them to stay with that university. I think like in the past, what we've seen is typically when they apply, they have made their decision up and kind of go with those, 2 to 3 schools. What we're finding now also is even after they submit that application, that's not a big marker of commitment yet. And while many of our marketing tactics really start and stop at the lead, there's an ocean of opportunity to continue that conversation with our students even after they submit an application. And again, what our research has really shown is what students are looking for is just transparency. Transparency of like, once you submit a lead or once you submit an application, let them know what's next. They will be reached out to an advising counselor, or they can apply directly online. This is a great opportunity for you to also discuss, like, again, what those value props are for your school to really truly differentiate yourself. What does pricing look like, etc. So yeah, it's lengthy. So the long-winded answer is the vast majority is we're seeing like roughly 4 months or less of that initial research to enroll program.
Right. So another question that came in was, for the research that you did, was it focused on mostly undergraduate audience, or does it also include prospective graduate students?
It was inclusive of everything, and we have
Okay.
cuts of all different flavors. By and large, we saw overall our overarching similarities. I would say, of course, like that enrollment journey gets a little bit shorter. We also did this for like, non-degree prospective students as well. But yeah, we did this for across both, and we have cuts for all of it.
Okay, fantastic. All right, we have some other questions. I'm bouncing between places here. So,
Sure.
one other question that came in from Leo. Hello, Leo. I know Leo, so it's great to see you. And he's curious if there is a course length that's considered short. So you defined, you had like certificate, a boot camp, but you also referred to a short course. Well, how would Google define a short course? Is there a particular number of weeks or hours completed that would classify that?
Yeah. Typically, how we are looking for it and how we like design the research is a short course is typically a course that takes less than a year in length, and it's not a full qualification. So it can just range from a few hours to several months. It really just depends on the class size and industry. What we did when we did all this research is we asked the prospective students, like, what is the type of course that they're looking to do? And then we asked and cascaded the questions afterwards.
From there. Okay,
Yep.
very good. Okay, so another question is, if you can talk a little bit more about a customer analysis. I think you referred to, I can't, I love the phrase that you used and
Yes.
I wrote it down myself. It was like a customer's customer journey, something
Yes.
along those lines. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Oh, yes. There is so much power in putting yourselves in the prospective students' shoes. Me and my team have done this a lot where we will do this analysis for our clients as well as for their competitors and just like go through the journey yourselves. You will find that, I mean, I'll tell you some anecdotes of what I found. Um, when you submit a lead or you submit an application, that experience that you get is rough. It can be a long time before you get a call from an enrollment advisor. And newsflash for anyone, not a lot of like millennials or Gen Zs really like to interact on a phone. Um, so having like a seamless digital experience is key because again, keep in mind, you're not just competing with your competitive set, right? You are competing with every single seamless, frictionless UX experience that exists online. So when you think about how simple it is to order your Starbucks in your mobile app, that is the experience that students are expecting from a university and how advanced they're expecting, like, you know, that technology and digital experience to really exist nowadays. So put yourselves in your student shoes, go through, submit a lead, see what that interaction is with that enrollment advisor. Are they asking you the same questions over and over and over again? Are there areas where you can personalize that experience? For example, hey, Alexis, you told me you were interested in a MBA program. That's fantastic. Give me like a few examples of what's like unique about that MBA program to your specific school. I found myself answering so many of the same questions over and over again, even on the application. So again, I guess there's one big takeaway: do this student journey for your own school, do it for your competitors, and highlight areas where there are friction or where areas that you can better personalize that experience. Promise it'll be completely time well spent.
And I'm curious, from that perspective, if when you do this with other clients, are you doing this like once a year? I found that in my experience, oftentimes when someone in your office or even like someone of, at senior leadership has a student going through the process and they uncover these hiccups and, bumps in the customer
Mhm.
journey or the student journey is often when things get attention. But I am curious, is there a recommended amount of like, do you do it every 6 months? Is it once a year? Is it based on the type of actions? Like, so it's, thinking about the journey of a student from submitting a lead to I'm going to do an application to now I've decided to make an appointment with a faculty member in a graduate program I'm looking to. Do you recommend like going by segment? Is there anything in that regard?
Yeah, we've done it in all various forms. And we typically do these about twice a year, I would say, or anytime, you know,
Okay.
any significant landing page optimization was made. And we kind of want to A/B test some of those findings. The great thing about digital media in general is it's so easy to divide your audience into two and A/B test the effectiveness of various different landing pages and what works, what doesn't. Um, but you are so right. I remember actually being in a room full of executives and sharing this customer analysis. And
Mhm.
that's really when you highlight the simplest things that can really enact change because so much of that student journey experience touches so many facets of the organization.
Yeah.
It's enrollment, it's marketing, it's your IT or UX department. And oftentimes it takes bubbling up those conversations to leadership to like really garner that alignment cross-functionally
Yeah.
to make things happen.
Fantastic. Okay, we have more questions coming at you. So I've
Right.
got like at least five. So hang on tight. Okay.
Mm.
So one other question is, generally speaking, a focus on local or regional recruitment is a large part of the first party data institutions have. How can that information be used to expand into markets that are vastly different, both culturally and location, than the markets they're coming that are among the norm?
Yes. Okay. We have this fantastic tool at Google. And if you have a Google rep, they'll be able to easily replicate this analysis. It's called a BDI CDI analysis. And what this essentially does is it looks at your brand demand and index versus the category demand index. So what this does is it takes a great crosshair of how strong is your brand demand and how large is that category demand. And what it does is it really categorizes it in four different areas depending on the geography that you select. So you can just do this in the US perhaps first. But what it will show you is where is your brand demand strong and the category for higher ed is also strong. So it identifies key markets for you to focus on and prioritize. So again, if you have a Google rep, I highly recommend you ask them to pull this brand demand category demand analysis so you can really be a little bit more surgical at your approach when you think about expansion.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay. And just confirming it is called the BDI/CDI tool.
Yes. Yes.
Great. Beautiful. Okay. So next question is from Michaela. Are you seeing an increase in non-degree seeking students looking for a certificate or short course formats as well? You mentioned degree seeking traffic is increasing.
Yes, we absolutely are. Let me see if I have some exact data to pull.
Awesome.
It is our typically, and this is again underscored by National Clearinghouse data, but
Mhm.
while we're seeing, high single digit query growth for education, we typically see, double digit growth when you look at those alternative pathways. So higher growth, smaller volume though, it's still a growing category. But yes, a lot of growth we're still seeing from these alternative short course programs.
Excellent. Okay. Another one, Carlos. Hello, Carlos. So one of the things he shared that he's encountered is that AI chatbots versus human chats during
Ooh,
researching programs can make a difference in deciding what school to pursue their studies. That first impression, sort of this first impression vibe. Do you have any thoughts on is one better than the other, does any of your research point to one making a better first impression than the other, or preference
yes.
even?
Yes. I will say I am not the expert in this, but I am the expert in terms of testing out so many different of these human versus AI driven chatbots. And what I will say is technology has come such a long way. Our
Yes.
Google Cloud counterparts here at Google are fantastic at creating these chatbot experiences that feel so human-like.
Yeah.
So I would highly encourage, if this is a path that you were looking to go down, reach out to the Google Cloud team and they would be happy to give you kind of an overview of their capabilities. And then you can kind of assess like the cost and overhead and the functionality and what works best for you. But I will say it's becoming so um, amalgamous, if you will, because that's how good and how fast the technology is getting.
Totally. I'm always amazed at how quickly I can get my own questions answered. And I usually come in thinking there's no way that this little robot can help me. And then I'm like, oh, pleasantly
Oh,
surprised. Thank you so
e-
much. It's so lovely.
exactly. Right, right.
It's so great. Okay. So another question that came in from Greg in the Whova app asked, with search becoming more controversial, should our web pages also read more conversational, like having more questions on the page itself?
Yeah. We actually get this question a lot, especially as like the search landscape has evolved with AI overviews
Yeah.
being launched and whatnot. As I mentioned, we're seeing faster query growth for um, uh, searches with five or more words in a query. So yes, it's becoming much more conversational. All I've heard officially from our SEO teams is to follow the same best practices that you did before. So yes, the more content, the more um, whether that's like blogs, whether that is videos, whether that is testimonials, etc., like the same best practices in SEO that applied before still remains today. So that is our official guidance.
Oops. We have just a few minutes left. So the next question, and Lizzie, I don't know if you saw this come in, if we're able to switch slides, that would be lovely. I think the last question would be that I'm seeing in here is how you go about getting a Google rep, for example. Someone had asked if it, what does that process look like to quote unquote get a Google rep?
Yeah, so Google's a very large company, no shock or surprise to anyone. How and there's varying levels of service. I advise I have the opportunity to partner with some of our largest customers across the higher ed and um, ed tech space. However, the best I think like route is to like use our chat functionality and ensure that you're routed to the same team. If you work with an agency, there's a high likelihood that you already have a Google rep. But like anybody on this call, if you need help, reach out to me. You have my contact information. Let me do the hard work of navigating the big Google and see what support we can get you.
Yeah, I was going to also add that for those of you that do work with Carnegie as your agency, or if you're looking for a new agency partner, we are considered a Google Premier Partner, which means that we are the only agency in higher education that works with higher education institutions that has this very prestigious distinction. This means that we are often notified of changes in Google prior to them, hitting the market. We have access to individuals such as Alexis or others on the team that we are able to get answers for you very quickly. If there's data insights that you need, I have clients that will say, can you tell me what else you're seeing? And sometimes our team is able to answer that, but there's oftentimes where we'll tap that resource internally so that we can get some really great numbers and insights for you to either confirm what you think you're seeing, to perhaps provide information to leadership to make a case for investment that you're looking for, and so on and so forth. Our team also, this is a designation that's given based on the training that we offer to our team. So I'll just put in a plug there for Carnegie, of course, as a wonderful digital partner. And if you didn't know that we had access to Google Reps, now you do. All right, our last question that I am seeing here is from Ellen. Oh,
And
yes, go ahead.
I'm gonna interrupt you for 1 second. That actually tees everything like the offer great that you are offering anybody on this call today.
Yes, it does.
So make sure you scan that QR code and get some complimentary support.
Yes, thank you so much, Alexis. You're so fantastic. Thank you. So we do have one more slide that we're going to share with you, but I do want to make sure we get to Ellen's question. So Ellen, you asked, with Gen X parents being more hands-on, do you see their involvement / research impacting the student journey? So, how are parents' research impacting the student journey?
Yes, we're seeing this a lot too, which is, I think, again, like why I love the opportunity to be in digital marketing, because like the targetability that digital offers you is so cool to really personalize that experience. So we have the ability to specifically target parents of kids of a certain age and whatnot. And we have another really cool tool called Insights Finder on YouTube, where you can see the types of YouTube channels that they're looking for, the types of search queries that pops up for this specific demographic. So yes, that is such a great net new audience type to not neglect, because parents are an extremely influential source during this time frame.
Fantastic. Alexis, you are the best. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. And despite technical difficulties, I feel like we had a lovely session. We had great questions. So a huge shout out to our attendees for the wonderful questions that you asked. Thank you so much. You make this experience so much more valuable for hopefully yourself, but certainly for others. So we want to thank you for attending this session with myself, Alexis, and on the student journey. And if you're interested, certainly in connecting with Carnegie on any kind of digital strategy, you can use this QR code to sign up for for a digital strategy consultation. Our team will be in touch. And also, as a special promotion for all of you that attended this session with the Carnegie Connection, we are offering a 25% discount on a Google Analytics audit or a brand lift study, which could be a really wonderful resource for you. And again, as you're thinking about trying to advocate for different resources you may need internally, this could be a wonderful tool to help make your case. As you know, Carnegie is a leader in higher education on digital advertising. We're honored to support colleges and universities across the board with their advertising efforts and to be able to provide free resources like this today. As a reminder, for those of you that are continuing to attend the conference, and we hope that with the beauty of virtual, you can duck in and duck out to what makes the most sense for you. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you need any additional support. You can reach us at the email conferences@carnegiehighereducation.com, or again, message us through the Ask Organizers Anything section of the community board in Wahoo. Be sure to head back to the agenda to see what other sessions might be a good fit for you. And if you found this session engaging, feel free, when we have these posted next week, to share it with anyone else on your team that you think might benefit from this session or any others. And we would look forward to having more you and any other members of your team with us today. So next up, we have other sessions that are happening throughout the day. Our next session is Snapchat Success Playbook, Mastering Creative Strategies for Captivating Content. And that is happening at 12 to 12:45 Eastern Time with Maisie Pereira, one of our account managers here at Carnegie. So we look forward to connecting with you at that session and wishing you all a wonderful rest of your Wednesday or your Tuesday. Today is just Tuesday, not Wednesday. Take care. Thanks so much. And Alexis, thanks again for being a part of our day.
Thank you, Anne.